Hey there, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video page. You're looking at the middle fork of the Flathead River in West Glacier, Montana. And right now, there are just people everywhere. It's actually a bit embarrassing. But on the side we're on today, I'm on the West Glacier side, and across the river from me is Glacier National Park. So I'm in across the way here. There's a golf course, and there's people everywhere. There's people down here on the beach. There's a guy over here fishing, and there's people up the beach here that are launching their rafts. So there's a lot going on. So let's get into it. First of all, a Skinwalker Ranch update, and for the people who have watched the season finale, there were some things in that episode that really threw me that Travis and his team didn't follow up on. And if you remember, they were flying in the helicopter, and they were flying above the ranch in a specific area near the triangle where up in elevation they had some sensor readings on certain aspects of the atmosphere that were abnormal. So they took the helicopter and they brought it up to elevation, and they were somewhere between 4,000 and 7,000 feet. In fact, lower in elevation than that, I think up at 2,500. And they started to get readings on the helicopter that were really abnormal. Namely, the altimeter on the helicopter started reading out elevations that were quite incorrect. So let's look at this one. So this is the helicopter owned by the owner. Now when they were thousands of feet up in elevation, the altimeter was reading that they were at 40 feet of elevation, which impossible. And they were looking out and they were thousands of feet up in the sky. And it fluctuated between 40 and I think 45, 50 feet. Not normal. Now, one of the things that really threw me about that is Cameron is the pilot. Super safety conscientious guy, obviously a super good pilot. And afterwards they just kind of walked away and said, oh yeah, whatever. But they never followed up and checked on the altimeter itself. Was it accurate? Did it malfunction? Did it suffer some damage? But the bigger thing to me is that helicopter. I've flown in a lot of them over the years. Those helicopters are very sensitive instruments. Much more sensitive than a plane. Plane engine goes off and you kind of glide along. Helicopter goes out and you can auto rotate for just a little bit, but you're going down fast. And I'm surprised they didn't check the bottom of the helicopter for radiation. Why, you ask? Well, they had radiation issues on the ranch in the past. In fact, Travis had almost blisters on himself from radiation burns. And they said something was below the helicopter and was tracking it as it was flying. I would want to get radiation readings on the bottom of that helicopter. Just for me. Maybe they know something they're not talking about. I don't know. So that was one big thing that right while it was happening, it was bothering me. The other thing that bothered me is that whatever was below the helicopter at the time, the people on the ground couldn't see anything. But everybody knows we see in a different zone than a lot of animals, and different than FLIR sees. FLIR is forward-looking infrared radar, and that sees a heat signature. Now, what if there was a heat signature below that helicopter? Why weren't those guys looking at the sky with FLIR? I don't know. Maybe they didn't have an instrument nearby. Maybe they didn't have it anywhere. I don't know. But I would have been looking at it, seeing the different fluctuations, seeing if there was a heat signature following that helicopter beneath it. Just a couple of thoughts for me. I'm not the brightest bulb on the cake in the room, but I'll give you my thoughts. I don't know if History Channel has signed them for another year, hopefully the Skinwalker does come back one more time. I don't know. But on to the letters. First, let me apologize. This is the first one. First, let me apologize for the following ramble. I'm putting this together extemporaneously. You may choose not to read it at all to your audience. I'm an 80-year-old, longtime student of the paranormal. I'm going to stop right here and let you guys kind of watch as I read. I have researched all manners of events which baffle our normal perception of reality. Events such as hauntings, crop circles, UFOs, old hag, mutilations, and others. I've spent time around Loch Ness, looked at saucer nests, mutilated cattle, and more. I try to maintain a healthy skepticism, which has not earned me a great deal of respect among other searchers. Stanton Friedman once accused me of a stew-pot thinking. Stanton was a great guy, by the way. He was a big UFO researcher. I sat next to him once at a conference. Good soul. I've become convinced of the following. Number one, UFOs are not from another planet. Around the world, what passes for UFO encounters varies with culture. If you're a Scandinavian, you may meet tall, attractive, blue-eyed blonde aliens. If you're a Brazilian peasant, you may have your night fishing ruined as you are pursued by a flying refrigerator with a big red headlight. It terrorizes you for hours. If you're in North America, you may be abducted and given a free physical by gray-skinned creatures with big bug-like eyes and so forth. Number two, as you well know, the bipedal man-like creatures also vary in description geographically. Sasquatch, Yeren, rock apes, snowmen all seem to have their particular locales. They have been around for as long as written history. Giants in the earth, David and Goliath, Kandahar giant. I could describe similar nuances among other paranormal events. Some people, and probably animals, are more sensitive to the paranormal than others and may be attractive to whatever is causing them. The paranormal will follow, even harass some folks. The paranormal feeds on human emotions and delights on arousal of fear and excitement. Next one. It is aware of your thoughts and can communicate to us at will if we are sensitive. Number 6. It has no more respect for us than we have for lab rats. Number 7. Its feedback to our reaction to an encounter may or may not be false evidence of an aspect to the phenomena. For example, calling on Jesus to make a harrowing encounter dissipate. The phenomena is constantly evolving but seems to be driven by our own interest or enthusiasm for a particular aspect. For instance, the Greeks 2,500 years ago were puzzled by cattle mutilations. Middle-aged England had its mowing devil. Since then, crop circles have evolved to include the Mandelbrot set near his home. UFOs were Foo Fighters in the 40s and have filled the experiential spectrum from glowing balls of light to floating cities. Hundreds of years ago, some were burned at the stake after reporting encounters of otherworldly beings. Number 9. I think we may be a series of experiments conducted for a purpose we don't fully understand, including forced evolution. Quoting, "Let us make man in our image," end of quotes, to help with labor, gold mining, etc. The Aztecs were hoarding the gold that belonged to the gods. How did billions of pounds of copper mined in the Great Lakes area make it to Cyprus where it fueled the Bronze Age? Number 10. If not from outer space, where's the locus of the paranormal? Elsewhere? Elsewhen? Another dimension. For all practical purposes, it is very near. A portal, if there is really such a thing, or not, other false impressions foisted in our reality, may have its neither end in another galaxy or nestled among the molecules of the air we breathe. Number 11, cryptids. May be part of a genetic tampering whose goal is to prepare a creature for life where conditions are harsher. This place may be in our past, our future, or some other galaxy. We probably never know. Contactees of all stripes who have message from God, space brothers, etc. are invariably full of crap. Sasquatch may be our replacement. Number 12. Human may be driving the evolution of the phenomena such as Sasquatch. The dissemination of information, popularizing sharing of experience may actually be creating more of the same. Okay, I'll stop there for a second. So you see that boat floating by? That is the height of laziness. You don't see covers on boats very often floats around here, especially on boats where there's you're going to fish, because you can't really with a top on like that. But I guess on a super hot day, it'd be nice. Okay, going back. I think that a few years ago, Sasquatch encounters were mostly confined to the Pacific Northwest. That's not true. Then Momo, then Scout Cake, and then other countries. Like UFOs, I think we may never know how to solve these enigmas. In 70 years of following the UFO thing, I don't see us any closer to an understanding than we were in 1947. I'm afraid this also applies to the mysteries that you have encountered. There is always hope. Maybe some insight will lead us to an understanding of our place in the universe. Pursuit of knowledge is the most noble goal, and I congratulate you for having the courage and the temerity to be among the leaders. Keep up the good work. So, I'll read you that letter because it gives you a broad scape of what our landscape looks like. And it is unusual, to say the least. So, I appreciated that letter. Next one. It says, I love the letters, Dave. Thank you for reading them. The naval officer's letter on how we are antennas is the best I've ever heard. It was brilliantly explained. I've been feeling that sentiment for years. When I was 11, I experienced a number of things that made me question the information that I was being fed by attending church. One day, my mother and I were riding in the car in silence. I was in deep thought, thinking to myself, what is God and who made him? And if he is the Almighty, then who is the devil to even oppose him in the first place? My mom looks over at me and says, I don't know, son. I don't know who made God. But the Bible tells us he is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. She read my dang mind. It kind of scared us both because we realized we communicated without speaking. The same phenomena happens all the time. Most people just don't know how to dial it in, or they're completely aloof to things outside the walls of traditional reality. But I believe we are all capable of it and much more. I refer to it as thinking really loud. Dave, I believe you are on the right path with communicating with your son Ben by putting it happening naturally. The spirit world is very real, and it is very dangerous to try to make contact because almost 100% of the time you'll completely be exploited by some type of negative entity. But it sounds like thousands of people have already told you that. Ha ha. I have to tell you about my friend that passed away from cancer on his 40th birthday in 2015. He had it for 2 years. At the time, he was in the last couple months of life. I had pinched my sciatic nerve. I was in really bad shape myself and was in extreme pain constantly. When I was feeling better, I could walk about 10 feet before severe pain would set in. I was just about bedridden for 2 months. I had no medical insurance and no access of any kind of treatment. It caused me extreme pain to get out and visit him, but I would make myself go over to see him because I knew his time was short. He could tell me how bad I was hurting, and he gave me some meds that he had. It was nerve pills, and it helped heal me. He also gave me his old Sega Genius to play since I couldn't walk. After a while, I started to make a recovery. I find it strange that my terminally ill friend had to give me meds and when the hospital wouldn't. I am thankful nonetheless. So the day he passed away, I knew he was going to die that day. So I went to tell him goodbye and asked him if he could send me a sign or come in my dream when he reaches the other side. He agreed to try. He was on hospice care and in bad shape, so I left him to pass away peacefully with his family. When I got home, I was sitting there in silence in the living room, kind of blown away by the situation and loss. I was sitting in front of the TV console on the couch, and the Sega controller jumps off the console as if somebody picked it up and threw it on the floor. I knew he had to have passed away. So I called his phone to speak to his wife. I asked her if Frank had died. She said he passed away 15 minutes ago. Just wanted to share that with you. I really appreciate the folks that are trying to scientifically measure this kind of stuff instead of just saying it doesn't exist. Because it is as real as UFOs and Bigfoot, that's for sure. Have a blessed day, Dave. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And why do I read those things? Because I think sometimes some people, the more you hear this, the more you'll realize it's real. Some of you who haven't experienced severe real loss. May have a tough time understanding why I go this direction at times. I've heard from many people who have lived in this arena that everything we're talking about is related. And some of you say, oh, that's stupid, Dave. How can that be? Well, I want you to think about it, because just maybe it might be true. So, I'm going to talk to you about some pretty interesting cases today. And the first case is one of the very first cases I ever did research before I started to write the books. The story was in Missing 411 Western United States, and as I've stated before, the Missing 411 Eastern U.S. and Western U.S. were one giant book. And I talked to a lot of friends. They said, Dave, you got to split it East and West. It's too big. I said, okay. So the first case was about an individual named, he just went by initials, B.B. Bakowski. B-A-K-O-W-S-K-I, Bakowski. And B.B. was 30 years old on February 22nd, 1911. And for his occupation, he was a photographer. He just wasn't any photographer. He was world class. And he was focusing on that Oregon area, and later in life, he focused on Crater Lake. And there is a picture that he took of Crater Lake. Gorgeous. Of course, black and white photography at the time. So originally he made his home in Burns, Oregon. And later he traveled and made his home in Klamath Falls, which is a little closer to the lake. And he went to the lake in the summer months and just was astounded by its beauty. And let me tell you, if you've never been to Crater Lake, it's one of those parks you got to put on your bucket list. You won't believe it when you walk up to the big bowl and you see this thing. Crystal clean blue water, just absolutely breathtaking. Well, after he did photography work around the crater in the summer, he decided he wanted to do it in the winter. So in February 1911, he went and decided to pack a sled with 2 months worth of equipment and pull it into the lake area and spend at least a month there. Well, he told his friends to start looking for him in 30 days if he didn't show up. And they did. He didn't show up. On March 3rd, 1911, originally Frank Burns and Albert Gibson were the first two in to the lake to look for Bakowski when he didn't come out. And then later, 2 more searchers from the Medford area entered. Well, Burns and Gibson found his sled and shovels 1.5 miles east of the lake in the snow. And later on, 2 more people came in and they found his camera cases at the Park Hotel that's on the rim of the lake. Searchers went back into the sled area and they found a giant canvas that was covered with snow. And they took it off and they found a 10-foot long tunnel that had all of his supplies in it. And right before they pulled off the canvas, they found a pencil that was stuck in the snow. Kind of odd. Searchers believed that he had spent 3 nights in that tunnel that he built. And there was also chopped wood right there next to where the entrance was. This was really the first disappearance in the modern age of anyone that I could find around Crater Lake that was a Caucasian. The Native Americans in that area knew not to go near the lake. They thought it was evil. They thought that there was a serpent in the lake at times. When the searchers went back, they didn't find any firearms, and they didn't find any cooking utensils, which they thought was odd. They found 2 cameras at the lodge, and they found 3 cases of exposed film, and they found almost 60 cases of unexposed film. So that's why they accounted for the 3 days that he was there, they thought. Now, during my time writing about missing people, one of the subsets is photographers that go missing. And they're usually never found, which is strange, very strange. Why photographers? Do they see something that something doesn't want you to see? Well, this is a cluster zone, Crater Lake, of missing people. Obviously water, ancient water. It's historical. And I found it a bit odd that he set his camp 1.5 miles east of the lake. It's a pretty good hump every day just to get to the lake, when he could have made it right near the edge of the lake where he could take photographs day and night. But no cooking utensils, that's odd. And chopping wood is something that somehow ignites these disappearances. And he was chopping wood. So, what happened to B.B. Bakowski? Well, it's been over 100 years. They never found his body. They never found anything else related to him. But that really started me on this path of looking into disappearances at that Crater Lake area. Now, the next case, also a Crater Lake. There's a man there named Alfred Goetze, Goetze, 68 years old. Disappeared September 24th, 1939 at about 2 p.m. He was working adjacent to the National Park headquarters inside Crater Lake. And he had worked there for about 2 weeks, and he was a saw filer. And they were building things at the lake at that time, residences and etc. And he was part of that crew that was cutting logs. He was very comfortable in the wilderness. He was described as being somebody who lived in the wilderness when he was from Ashland, Oregon. Ashland is right on the California-Oregon border. So he didn't have any horses and he didn't have a vehicle. He just had a rudimentary campsite and logging camp where he did his work. He was very, very dependable, everyone said. Well, some people came to resupply him and they couldn't find him. And they searched the area, couldn't find him. So then they got a hold of the National Park Service and they got everybody who was employed by the park to start searching. And they brought him in. 8 days. And his family came up. Initially, some believe he quit and went back to Ashland. That wasn't true. And they looked for over a week. And in fact, searches went on for multiple weeks after that by friends and family. This is Alfred. And he was a woodsman, made cabinets, was very handy with his hands. The search started on September 26th when the first worker arrived. They determined he hadn't been there for at least 2 days. That's why the September 24th, 1939 time frame came up. It snowed 4 to 5 inches during the search. And that's the continued trend of Crater Lake. Now, going a little further north, go to a place called Tumalo Falls. And a little further north in Oregon from Crater Lake. This is what Tumalo Falls looks like. It's a very pretty place. Gorgeous. And a man named Samuel Ipock. Sorry I don't have a picture on Samuel. He's 23 years old. October 10th, 1977, this happened. About 5 p.m. And he was born in 1955 in Bend, Oregon. And he and his dad loved hunting and fishing together. On the 10th, his dad's name was Harry, and Samuel went to Tumalo Falls to go deer hunting. They had hunted this area many, many times before, and at 23 years old, Samuel was a very experienced outdoorsman in very good shape who knew this area like your backyard. So they started hunting in the morning hours. They agreed to meet back at camp, and Samuel didn't come back. So his dad searched the area, Then his dad got a hold of the sheriff's office. Sheriffs came out on October 11th, and a massive search was started. This was huge. And one of the areas that Harry told the searchers is that they were up against a big cliff. And he said, hey, don't worry about going up there. My son would never go up. There's never been deer up there, so don't worry about it. Okay, so they searched the bottom areas of the cliff heavily. So on the third day in the afternoon, after they had searched all of that bottom area around the camp and around the cliffs, a searcher coming back at the bottom of the cliff that had been searched dozens of times, they stated, they find Samuel's body. And they're stunned. They said he had to have fallen 150 feet and slipped another 190 feet. So you're talking about a 300-foot total fall. Every article said this area had been searched many times. His dad said that he wouldn't have gone to the top of the cliff. And the crews had all but eliminated that area at the bottom of the cliff from their search efforts. It's a cluster zone of missing people. He fell. There was water nearby, and the area was previously searched. Now, hit up this map for you. So this is Crater Lake down here. And this is Goetze, Bakowski. There's many more. I just haven't told you about them yet in this Crater Lake area. This is Ipock right here. And Bend, Oregon is right here. So just west of Bend is where they were hunting in that Tumalo Falls area. This region right here has many, many disappearances and is a continuous part of the Cascade Mountain Range, and lots of volcanoes and lots of water. Next case happened very recently. This one bothered me a lot. For some reason, I don't know why. Just looked like a nice man to me. Sanford Sandy Rice, 75 years old, missing June 23rd, 2016. He owned the general store, it's called the Horton Store, in Blatchley, Oregon, him and his wife. Well, he loved the outdoors, he loved to hike, and he was also a runner. And so, to get back in shape for the season, he told his wife that he had read an article about a place called Marion, M-A-R-I-O-N Lake. And he was going to go out and do a day hike there. So on June 23rd, he drove out, took the day off from the store, and he started hiking around the lake. Well, there's a lot of these warm days in Oregon, and it was warm. And he was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and people had seen him walking around. And it started to rain, and they said he was still out there walking around, but not that unusual. So Sandy was a wholesome person. He did a lot for the community besides running the store. He also coached sports for kids. Well, he was supposed to open the store on June 24th, 2016, the next day. He didn't arrive home that night. He didn't arrive to open the store, and his wife called the sheriff. Lynn County Sheriff's Office took the case. And they immediately drove out, found his car at the Lakehead Trail, and they brought in scent dogs and cadaver dogs. They brought in air support, and Sandy's daughter came out to search. And during her search efforts, she blew her knee really bad. And it took them 6 hours to carry her out of the search zone that they were looking. That's how badly hurt she was. There was a 6-day search effort. They found nothing. Airplanes, canines, 2 types of canines, scent sniffing and cadaver. Cadaver dogs can smell a corpse miles away. It's a cluster zone of missing people. Water, weather, lots of granite. He was a runner, another profile point. It's been 5 years. Sandy Rice has never been found. Now he was 75 years old. So a lot of people say, well, you know, they're always trying to, first of all of the cases I give you, there's never any evidence of animal predation, number one. Number two, if a body is decaying, I don't care how well you hide it, the dogs are still going to smell it. Unless it's, I would say probably, unless it was sealed in plastic, buried 6 feet in the ground, watered, and plants were growing on it, I think most canines in many, many, many instances are going to pick, good ones are going to pick up the scent. Not necessarily buried in the ground, but they're still going to pick up the scent if you die and you fall into it. Let's say a hole, or it's phenomenal what these dogs can do. So when I talk about search and rescue, not finding somebody, this is never a slam on them. They're doing great work. 95% of all search and rescue people are volunteers. And I would encourage you that if you have spare time and you want to dedicate something to the community, become a search and rescue volunteer. You can go to classes, contact the local search and rescue in your county, and that's your endpoint. Almost every search and rescue organization I know of right now is looking for people. Almost every one. And it's total volunteer. You got to be certified in most instances, and you got to do that on your own. It costs a little bit of money. But you're going to meet like people that are good, wholesome, nice people. If you like canines and dogs, I'm sure they're going to welcome you with open arms if you go through the training. So, it's getting hot here. And, but boy, that's beautiful. And thank you for your friendship. Thanks for being a continually supportive person to our village. Please know that I appreciate everybody that gives us a thumbs up. Please post us on social media. Make sure you're still subscribed. And when you're at that picnic, this is always interesting picnic conversation. The more people we can educate on the topic, the more people we can save. The number of people who have never heard of a personal locator beacon is off the chart. Why, I have no idea. But I can tell you that probably several thousand people have contacted me in 10 years and said, Dave, we never even heard of that device. So talk it up. It exists. It's not that expensive. And everyone who goes hiking should be carrying one. So I'm very grateful. Thank you for being here. And I'll give you a scan of the water around here just so you can see it. So right now, you're looking at the glacier on the far side. Can get a view of the bank downstream. Then up from the water, we got a mountain right here. So, here we go. Flathead River, Middle Fork. I appreciate the friendship. Be safe, and we'll see each other soon. Thank you very much.